On December 8,
2024, Syria witnessed a historic turning point as the Syrian capital, Damascus, fell into the hands of rebel forces, leading to the declaration of victory by the opposition and the collapse of the regime of President Bashar al-Assad. The developments surrounding this event have been nothing short of dramatic, with unverified reports emerging about the fate of the Syrian president himself. According to a report from Axios, a Syrian Ilyushin-76 aircraft, which is suspected to have carried Assad, vanished shortly after taking off from Damascus International Airport, en route to an undisclosed location. Flight tracking services confirmed that the aircraft took off and initially followed a course toward the northwest, but it veered off course near the city of Homs before rapidly descending and disappearing from radar. With no official confirmation or clear explanation as to what happened to the aircraft or its passengers, the situation remains unclear, and the question of Assad's whereabouts has become a focal point of speculation. The disappearance of Assad's plane has added a layer of intrigue to the already chaotic and tumultuous events unfolding in Syria. It is believed that the plane took off in the hours just before rebel forces overran Damascus, which had long been the heart of Assad's regime. As the rebels stormed the city, with no significant resistance from Assad's military, celebrations erupted in the streets of Damascus. Rebel forces, led by factions such as the Free Syrian Army and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham (HTS), declared the city liberated from what they referred to as the tyrant Assad. For many Syrians, the fall of Damascus signified the culmination of years of struggle against a brutal regime that had violently suppressed protests, unleashed chemical weapons on civilians, and waged a bloody civil war for over a decade. The rebels' declaration marked the end of Assad's 24-year rule over Syria, although the larger conflict is far from over. Reports about Assad's whereabouts remain murky. While there is no concrete evidence of the plane being shot down or experiencing mechanical failure, various reports have suggested that the Syrian president may have been on board the Ilyushin-76. According to data from FlightRadar, after departing from Damascus, the plane's flight path took a sharp turn near Homs, an area that has long been a strategic location in the conflict. The aircraft reportedly descended rapidly in a manner that suggests it could have been in distress, though whether this was due to an attack or a mechanical issue is still uncertain. No official statement from Syria's presidential office, the military, or Assad's allies in Iran or Russia has been issued to clarify his status. As of now, the fate of the plane and its passengers is unknown. The timing of the incident coincides with a significant military and political shift in Syria. Rebel forces had launched a decisive offensive on Damascus, the final bastion of Assad's power in Syria, and encountered little to no resistance from the president's forces. The absence of resistance from Assad's military units has raised questions about whether the regime had prepared for a rapid retreat or whether it was taken by surprise by the speed of the rebel advance. Some analysts have suggested that the lack of military response indicates that Assad may have already planned his departure from the capital, a theory that aligns with the disappearance of his plane. While Assad's whereabouts remain unknown, the fall of Damascus and the subsequent rebel victory marked a dramatic shift in the ongoing Syrian conflict. For years, the Assad regime, bolstered by the military support of Russia and Iran, had been able to maintain control over large parts of the country. However, the loss of Damascus represents a critical blow to the regime, both symbolically and militarily. The city had long been Assad's political and military center, and its capture by rebel forces deals a severe blow to his grip on power. The situation in Damascus quickly descended into chaos as rebels poured into the city, with celebratory gunfire ringing out across the streets. Protesters, many of whom had been oppressed under Assad's regime for years, took to the streets chanting freedom and waving flags as the news spread that Assad had fled the capital. Meanwhile, rebel groups declared that the country was now free from the tyrant Assad and called for the return of Syrians who had fled the conflict to come back home and participate in the rebuilding of the nation. For many Syrians, the capture of Damascus marked a long-awaited victory after over a decade of war and suffering. The question of what comes next for Syria, however, remains uncertain. While Assad's physical departure from the capital and potential disappearance could signal the end of his rule, the power vacuum created by his absence may lead to new challenges for the country. Despite the rebels' declarations of victory, large portions of Syria remain under the control of various factions, including Kurdish forces, remnants of the Islamic State, and the self-declared autonomous regions in the north. The country is far from unified, and the absence of a central governing authority leaves the door open for further conflict and power struggles. In the context of regional politics, Assad's departure would also mark a significant shift. Russia and Iran, two of Assad's most powerful allies, have played a crucial role in sustaining his regime throughout the conflict. The collapse of Assad's government would force both countries to reassess their involvement in Syria. Russia, which has provided significant military support, would likely seek to protect its interests in the region, including its naval base in Tartus, while Iran, a longtime ally of Assad, could lose a key foothold in the region. These nations may attempt to broker a new political settlement in Syria, though it is unclear what that settlement would look like in a post-Assad Syria. The international community, too, is watching the situation closely. The fall of Assad would represent a significant shift in the geopolitics of the Middle East, with implications for regional stability and the balance of power between the United States, Russia, Iran, and other stakeholders. The US and its allies have long opposed Assad's rule, and his departure may open the door for diplomatic initiatives aimed at rebuilding Syria and stabilizing the region. However, any transition of power would be fraught with challenges, including the need to address Syria's fractured political landscape, the return of millions of displaced Syrians, and the humanitarian crisis that continues to affect the country. For the Syrian people, the fall of Damascus represents both a victory and a new beginning. While the end of Assad's rule may provide a sense of relief to many who have suffered under his regime, the road to peace and stability in Syria remains uncertain. The country's long and painful conflict has left deep scars, and the task of rebuilding will require not only political will but also the support of the international community. As the fate of Bashar al-Assad remains a key question, the future of Syria hangs in the balance, with no clear answers yet on what comes next for the war-torn nation. The disappearance of Assad's plane, and the broader events surrounding the collapse of his regime, have left the world in suspense. The outcome of this pivotal moment in Syria's history remains unclear, but the consequences will reverberate across the Middle East for years to come.